Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Books with BethX here, and today, as you can see by the title, I think it's down there now, isn't it? We are discussing what I read in March. So this month's actually been quite a good month because I read 6 books, and I normally only read 4. Someone's alarm keeps going off, so I'll try and do my best to film this. But to be fair, that's mainly due to one of the books being an audiobook and one being a short story, which I'll come on to as I go throughout this video. Also at the end, I'm going to include a bit with my Storygraph stats. I thought that might be quite interesting to have a look at, especially because in March, I only read the Goodreads Choice Awards winners, which with a little bit of a caveat, which I'll explain for the first book. So this month's a bit different because I didn't know what I was reading this month. So it'd be interesting to see, based on the stats, how successful this was. And whether I should do it again, which, well, we shall see. So let's begin. So the first book I pulled out of the basket was I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. I will add that most of these books I read as an ebook, so they will be popped up on the screen. There was only one which was a physical book, so just bear that in mind. But yes, the first one was I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston, which actually came third in the young adult section. Because I believe first and second were both books within the series, and I hadn't read any of the rest of the series, and I wasn't going to read through all the series to get to one book. That was it, the winner basically. So this one won, and I quite enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. All of these books, pretty much, apart from one, I believe, all have a in-depth review on my TikTok, so if you want to learn more about them, definitely go give them a watch. I'll leave the link in my description to my TikTok, it's in the link tree. But basically, yeah, so I gave this 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. I think it was quite fun. I wouldn't say it was the best thing ever written, but it's not. It's YA. It's not supposed to be. So this was kind of a romance mystery with LGBTQ plus elements. It was really good representation throughout this. I would recommend reading this if you were doing the trans rights readathon earlier this month. Obviously it's a little bit delayed now, but there is a non-binary character in the book and other people that are questioning and so on. But basically in this you have, what's her name? My mind is like a sieve. So the main character basically gets kissed by Shara Wheeler, who's like the popular girl in school, but she's also the main character's academic rival. They're both like top of the class. And then Shara Wheeler goes missing and leaves behind all these like little hints and clues as to where she's gone. And she leaves them for both the main character, Shara Wheeler's boyfriend, and Shara Wheeler's neighbour, and they're all like working together to try and find out where she is. So the main character sort of leaves her own friendship group to go on and with these popular, well, one's a popular kid, one's more of like the rebel type kid, to find out where she's gone, essentially. And it was fun, it was enjoyable, although the mystery was sort of wrapped up by about halfway through, and then from then on there were bits that were a bit coincidental for my liking, but I still enjoyed it, and so yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. I think I will read, is it Red, White and Royal Blue, I believe she's also written. So I'll definitely give that a read because that's an adult, so maybe that'll be a bit more up my street. Not that I don't normally read YA, there's quite a few, this is like my YA section behind me. I don't know if you can see it because it's behind me. But yeah, I don't think it was the best thing I've ever read, but it's not the worst thing I've ever read, so it was fine. Then the second book I read was actually a short story because I needed something to bridge the gap between finishing I Kiss Shara Wheeler and then my next book arriving, because I ordered that for delivery. So I reread Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemisin. Now this is part of the Amazon Forward collection, which is a collection of 6 short stories. They're roughly about between 30 to 50 pages long each. They're free if you have Amazon Prime, at least in the UK. I don't know how it works elsewhere, but if you have Amazon Prime and a Kindle, you can get all these for free. Although you can only read them on the Kindle app, not on your actual Kindle for some reason. But yeah, so there's 6 different famous authors. So you've got N.K. Jemisin, Veronica Roth, who wrote Divergent. You've got Andy Weir, although his wasn't that good. Blake Crouch, again his wasn't that great. And a couple of others. N.K. Jemisin's Emergency Skin was my favourite when I read them the first time, and once again it's my favourite again when I've read it again. So they're all sci-fi little short stories. Really recommend giving them all a read, especially if you want to like try and hit your target. I think this is why I did really well last year, because there were all 6 really short ones that I pretty much read one a day of in, I think it was January last year. So it's quite difficult to explain because they are so short, but in this one you basically have this character who's travelling back to Earth, and hundreds of years ago a lot of rich people left Earth because Earth was basically dying, essentially, with climate change, wars and things like that. All the rich people left and went off to another planet to live on, but they need this particular material which you can only get from Earth. So they send the main character back, but the main character, it's so difficult to explain that because the main character doesn't have skin. Essentially, they're almost like a mesh of, I'm explaining this so badly, this is the best one in the whole collection. But the main character basically is like a mesh of cells inside a suit, and they travel back to Earth, and they're warned that they can't speak to anyone because they'll be attacked and things like that. And they basically, the rich people are now a master race. They're perfect, they're white, they're probably blonde, and the type, the master race, rich, beautiful, don't age, don't have children, don't get fat, don't get too skinny, that type of thing. They're not tanned or anything like that. So when the character travels back and sees all these people which are of different races, of different body shapes and sizes, and there are females there's no females back on his other planet, the character gets very confused and doesn't really understand what's happening. And it's kind of exploring the state of humanity and how being different is a good thing, essentially. That's a really bad way of explaining it. Look up reviews because this is the best one of the whole collection. And again, when I reread it, I gave it 5 stars. So highly recommend giving it a read. I say it's really short, and as I say, if you have Amazon Prime, it's completely free. So do give that a read. And then my next read, I actually have a physical copy of, and it is I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Now again, I really enjoyed this. I think this won the best biography and memoir section. Gave this 5 stars. I mean, as I said in my review, it's difficult to rate a memoir because it's someone's life, but the way that this is written is so interesting but also so scary and depressing at the same time. I will say look up trigger warnings before reading this because there is a lot. I mean a lot, and especially if you're sensitive to anything to do with like body weight, abuse, physical, mental abuse, emotional abuse, I guess, family abuse, definitely look them up before reading this. But this is basically about Jeanette McCurdy's life. So Jeanette McCurdy was mostly known for being a star on iCarly and then the spin-off Cat and Sam. I never watched the show myself, you don't need to watch it to read this. It basically follows her life from being about 5 years old up until almost modern day. Is that the right word? Basically up until she wrote it. And it's her coming to terms with how she was mistreated throughout her life by her mother, getting over various eating disorders, and basically trying to learn to be a person again and actually do what she wants out of life because she doesn't want to be an actor. But this is so good, so interesting. Highly recommend giving this a read. I gave it 5 stars. And then the next thing I actually listened to, and this was my first ever audiobook. So it's quite a big one to jump into because it's very long. I think most are about 9 hours. I believe this was about 15. And it was Becoming by Michelle Obama, which again I also gave 5 stars to. And that means I've read 2 memoirs this month, which is pretty good. Especially because I've got a goal of reading 4 non-fiction across this whole year. And in this month I read 2, and I'm about to finish my 3rd, which is a bit of a hint for my next wrap up, I guess. But yeah, again, really enjoyed this. And again, follows her throughout her life from being a little child, growing up, obviously meeting Obama, getting married, their struggles with having children, and then obviously becoming First Lady and living life in the White House, and then also coming to terms with what came after that. And it's just so interesting learning about her because as a British girl, I don't know if it's the same in America or other countries, but we don't really hear, we know obviously what's happening over there. We know of the laws that are being passed because obviously we have social media nowadays. Maybe it would be different back pre-social media times. But when I was the age but they're in charge, it was pretty much the time that I wasn't really that politically aware until really 2016, which was a huge year across the world pretty much, because obviously in the UK you have Brexit, and then we voted again for Conservatives, and then obviously in America they voted for Trump that year, and Obama moved out in 2017 but voted for Trump in 2016. So that was quite a politically awakening year for me. I mean, I had voted before in the UK, but yeah, it kind of opened your eyes a bit. But because of that, I didn't really know too much about the Obamas, obviously, other than him being the first black president of America. So it was really interesting learning about her life, how she went from quite humble beginnings. They lived in a tiny little flat with one bedroom, and she lived in there with her brother and her parents, then growing up and going to quite a prestigious university, getting a very good job, meeting Obama, and then adapting to life and being in the public perception. Is that the right word? That's probably not the right word. And it's very interesting seeing her life change throughout the years, especially with the struggles of getting pregnant both times as well was quite interesting. But also adapting to living in the White House as well, and not being able to have the freedoms they had before because of the fact that they are presidents, as well as also the risk of them being black and risks that come with that, especially as a public figure. It was very interesting, so I highly recommend giving that a read or a listen. The one I listened to was actually narrated by Michelle. I don't know if all versions are. I don't really know too much about audiobooks and how they work yet, apart from listening to this one and the one I'm currently listening to. But yeah, give that a listen/read if you get the chance to. Then the next book was my first sci-fi read of the year. Well, no. Technically it's the second, because my first was Emergency Skin, but that was a reread, so I won't class that. And it was the winner of the Sci-Fi Choice Awards section, and that was Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. Now this is a bit different to the sci-fi I usually read, because usually it's a little bit more intense with battles and things like that. So I don't know if you can see on my sci-fi section up here, but we've got things like Andy Weir, that's what I normally read, or I'll read something dystopian, or Becky Chambers, she's quite a big one. I actually need to read her Monk and Robot series, that's the only one I've not read by her yet. And I believe that's actually quite cosy. So this I would class as a cosy sci-fi. It is a time travel story, so if you're interested in time travel, give this a read, and basically like the impact that decisions you make when travelling back in time have on the future. So it's quite interesting. So in this you have four different perspectives. You start off in 1912 with a man who's been exiled from England to Canada. You then jump forward to January 2020, and you have a character basically trying to figure out what happened to her friend who went missing, or well, she's trying to reconnect with her friend and finds out she's gone missing. Then you jump even further forward to 2203, I believe, where you've got, so this is more sci-fi now, so you've got a woman who is from a moon colony down on Earth, travelling around and giving a book tour. So her book's just being adapted for a film, and there's a hint of a pandemic starting in New Zealand. And then you jump even further forward to the future to 24,000, and you have a man who's named after a character in that previous woman's book. He's trying to find his place in the world and then becomes a time traveller. And I don't want to say too much about giving it away, because obviously all the stories interlinked. So yeah, I gave this 3.5 stars. It was good. I won't say it's my favourite. The writing was pretty. I quite liked the ending and how it all like sort of looped back round. But yeah, it was wasn't my favourite sci-fi I've ever read, but I did enjoy it. So I gave it 3.5 stars. And then the final book I read in the month of March was Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which I also gave 5 stars to. So this is my first Emily Henry book, and I loved it, honestly. And I don't read very much usually, but I absolutely loved this book, and I need to buy it and all her others and read them all now. I know she's got a new one coming out this month. I don't know when about this month, but there's a new one coming. But in this you follow Nora. Now Nora is sort of the woman that men are with before they travel off to a small town, save a small business, and then find the love of their lives and leave her and get with them and leave her back in New York. you've all seen the Hallmark films, but in this, it's Nora who gets a happy ending. So basically, it starts off. So she's a literary agent, and it starts off with her trying to push her client's book on a very prestigious, well-known editor called Charlie. And Charlie rejects the book because he says that the location it's set in doesn't exist, which it does. But he still rejects it anyway. It then jumps to 2 years later. The book is a worldwide success. It's been turned into a film, and everyone loves it, especially her sister, who is 3 months pregnant, and she wants to go on like a sort of last trip holiday to this town where the book is set in, just see what it's like. And they sort of have like a bucket list when they go there, and she convinces her sister to go. It's during August, where apparently there's a downtime in the book industry. There's still things happening, but there's not really any books being published in August apparently, which I didn't know. That's another thing that I quite like about this book. I like the insights into the book industry. So they travel to there, and who does she meet but Charlie, the editor who didn't want to publish the book, and it turns out he's actually from there. And then their relationship blossoms. And I think it's really good. I really enjoyed it. It's almost, I wouldn't call it enemies to lovers because they weren't enemies, maybe work rivals to lovers. It's probably the best way of explaining it. But I love the relationship between the two main characters. I loved her relationship with her sister as well. And yeah, there was 0 red flags. It was quite a realistic relationship. There was no fighting or any abuse or anything like that. It was just a really good book, and I highly recommend giving it a read. And as I say, I'm going to read all the rest of Emily Henry's books now and also compare them all. So yes, highly recommend that one, 5 stars. So now I'm going to have a look at some stats from Storygraph, and I'll pop them up on the screen as we discuss each of them. So I currently aim to read about 4 books a month, but I think I'm about 1 behind on that now because of January. I technically only read 1 book in January because it was I read The Hobbit, and then I read most of The Fellowship of the Ring, which then I finished in February. But now trying to catch up. So I have smashed that goal of reading 4 books a month because I read 6. 1 was an audio book and 1 was a short story, but they count, okay? They count. And from those 6, I read 1,928 pages, which is pretty good. On Storygraph, you basically categorise books based on their mood. So 4 of these books were categorised as reflective, 3 emotional, 2 lighthearted, 2 funny, and then the rest were all 1, which you'll see on screen. So basically, they were all quite easy reads, but a little bit emotional, but all quite easy reads, so quite happy there. 67% of the books were medium paced, that's 4 of the 6, and then 33% were fast paced. Again, 67% were 300 to 499 pages, which is good. That's sort of the area I aim for. 67% were fiction, which is pretty good, which means that 2 were non-fiction. Genre-wise, this is quite interesting, so I didn't realise I read this many of each. 2 were sci-fi, so that would be Sea of Tranquility and Emergency Skin. 2 were categorised as romance, so that's obviously Book Lovers and I Kissed Shara Wheeler, and 2 were classed as memoir, which was obviously I Got My Mum Died and the Michelle Obama one. So that's quite interesting. 67% digital. Usually all my books are physical. This is going to change obviously now that I've got access to a library with both audio and digital books on there. And my average rating was 4.5, so that means it was a very, very successful month. Considering I was reading books that I hadn't chosen, I think that's a really good month for me. 4.5, usually it'll be around 4 stars, I reckon. So 4.5 means I did really well, and I think I will do this challenge again, and I highly recommend everyone else do it. So maybe later in the year, maybe in October, maybe September actually, I might do the challenge again because I've got another, I think 8 books left in the pile. So maybe I'll do it again. We'll see. Either that, or I might, when I've got less that I want to read, will that ever happen? Probably not. I might maybe pick one out each month and have to read that book, and I've got time then to plan when I read it, maybe. I'm not sure. I'll have a think and see what I decide, but I don't know. But then The only issue with doing this challenge is that I bought a lot of books last month that I then couldn't read until now. And now I've got loads of library holds coming available, which I also want to read, but I didn't want to read them just now because I've got other ones I want to read. My TBR is also already being ruined, but I'd say, yeah, this month was really successful and I would definitely do it again. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you've read any of these other books, as I'd love to know. Make sure to follow me on all my socials. I've got the links down below in the Linktree link. And yes, I will be back with another video, probably on Thursday or Wednesday. Usually my vlogs go out on Thursday, so if you want to watch any of my reading vlogs, look out for them on Thursdays. So thank you for watching, and I will see you later. Goodbye.